Non-Americans of Reddit, what is the weirdest thing you have seen an American tourist do that would be considered very disrespectful, inappropriate in your country? Not by their round. In a pub in Ireland, when the pub round system had been explained to them, and they had happily taken drinks from everyone, and when it was their round, and everyone had empty glasses, and it was mentioned that think it's your round, and they responded I think I'm good now thanks. Mortified for bringing them with me, and yes I bought the round for everyone else on their behalf. Skinflints, that's entirely on purpose, cheap freaking buttholes. When I was in France, a couple of American tourists tried to sneak out of the Paris catacombs with a bone they had stolen. When I went back around 2010, as you climbed your way back up there was a security guard at the top exit who'd pat you down and search your bag for any bones. There was even a tray there like when you empty your things at the airport. Anyone who's be dumb enough to try to take one of those bones deserves to get haunted as crap. I'm an American but I was visiting England and touring the Tower of London. There was a cannon behind a rope with a do not touch or climb sign. This American woman lifted the rope and told her kid, maybe 7 years old, to go sit on the cannon so she could take a picture. The kid protested and said the sign said number. The woman said she didn't care and ordered her kid to do it or she'd ground them. Confused European intensifies. I worked at a famous tourist location in the UK. We would see thousands of people from around the globe coming and going on a daily basis. After a couple months there I grew very accustomed to how different cultures approached the world and new environments. Americans were always a wild card. As a general rule, Americans weren't afraid to start a conversation with you. Whether it was an Apache helicopter pilot or a recently divorced woman who thought you asking if they were exploring by themselves was an invitation to have wild sex later on in the evening. They always had a story to share and were always happy to indulge you. This is how we started a conversation we wished we never did, with a simple comment about the awful weather. It was a wet and blustery day. Truly one would hope not to come across on your holiday, but humorously expected in the UK. An American man walks in and loudly proclaimed, "Gee, that's some weather you guys have here, eh? Ha yes. Well don't worry, we've got the heaters on. We also sell whiskey in the shop if you want something a bit more potent." My colleague laughed. "Oh no, I don't want to go down that road again. I wouldn't be able to control myself," the man said with a grin that indicated he was joking. "Ha, okay then. I'm barely holding off the urge myself, so I know what you mean," again jested my colleague. "Yeah no, it would be a bad idea." A sudden look of seriousness crossing the man's face. "My wife left me and I'm still trying to win her back. All because of my drinking. Ha, ha, well I'm sure you will. No, it's more complicated than that. It wasn't just the drink but I got into harder drugs as well. I'm still trying to clean myself up." The still dripping umbrella he was holding lent to the awkwardness. It had been 30 seconds and we were now on the verge of counseling a man we had just met. "Well, I imagine you're doing the right thing. Is your wife with you?" A stupid question that only prolonged our suffering. "No, she's back in the States. I just went on a trip by myself to clear my head, you know, try and get my priorities straight." Understandable. "Well, you enjoy the sight, sir. It's plenty warm inside." "Will do. Thank you." A large grin appearing on his face as if he had shared nothing but pleasantries. He proceeded to peruse the shop, pausing at the glass cases holding the whiskey for an uncomfortable amount of time. "Say, these sure do look like great malts though. I would love to try them." Unsure as to if it was an offhand comment or a genuine interest, we laughed but quickly turned to latch onto the next customer who walked in, eagerly giving them a 5-star experience. The man walked on through the shop and thankfully into the main hall. "American here. That happens here, too. It's because our culture is isolating and people are lonely. They open up to strangers and people give that kind of armchair therapy like you did. Although weird for you, you guys probably made him feel less alone in the world and like his trip was worth it." An American exchange student who complained to me in anger that bookstores in Germany have so many books in German. I mean, it's not unusual here for every bookstore to even have a small section of books in other languages including English, so it's not like she never got to buy a book here. She could read. I overheard the guy standing in front of me in the queue at MCD's having a meltdown. "What do you mean you don't accept American dollars? This is a McDonald's. This was in Poland, Europe. You could direct him to a nearby McDonald's that accepts US dollars, about 5,000 miles, south, west. I was working a bar in Scotland. There was a woman one night with her daughter and she refused to pay with anything other than American cash. It was a super uncomfortable situation, me trying to explain how stupid it all was. Her daughter, who I think was living in Scotland, was trying to calm her down and trying to pay, but the mother kept pulling her hand away from the card machine saying, "You people love our money is more important than yours." She kicked on for a solid 5 to 10 minutes, her daughter ended up paying and leaving. Then she had a go at me for embarrassing her daughter and she even left a review on TripAdvisor explaining the situation. She explained it perfectly, literally wrote herself as the bad guy in the review. Freaking mind-boggling how delusional this bird was. Probably only weird, but when on a flight back to the UK from the US, the American lady sat next to me started asking questions about England about 40 minutes before landing, and not just like any local recommendations but really basic stuff like what currency do we use. It seemed like she had got on the plane knowing absolutely nothing about the UK, which blew my mind. Not just from a haven't you planned your trip POV, but having the confidence to do that. She seemed to think it was a small place and everything she wanted to see would be in front of her hotel. She was very polite and lovely about it in a naive way though. Similarly, I was once asked if our New York to Dublin flight would actually land in Ireland, or would we have to land in England and get a boat across. The gentleman seemed to be under the impression that a plane might be too big to land on Ireland comfortably. Last time I was in Moscow, had an hour to kill before the train to the airport, so we went for a coffee at Starbucks. A Russian tour guide comes in with a group of 50-60-year-old fat couples, who proceeded to order coffee and tried to pay with dollar bills. When informed that this was not legal tender, the conversation went something like, "I know this frappuccino costs exactly $3 in Starbucks. Sorry, only rubles or credit card works fine. Yeah, I'm gonna take dollars. This is an American company and I'm an American citizen with American money. Sorry, is not money in Russia, but credit card is fine. I'm an American citizen and I'm paying you these $3 for a coffee that costs $3. Sorry, price is 150 ruble." After which she shouted for a manager, shouted at the tour guide and shouted at her husband for not helping. I was at a lavender farm in the south of France a few years ago. 2 coachloads of American tourists pull up. They all got out on the standard "you won't get long enough to really see this place" type tour. One lady very proudly states she is an expert on lavender and that this place was cute but it's all fake. The lavender isn't the right color. There were bees and other insects all over it. The whole farm smelled amazing and there was a harvest taking place. It was very real. Mayo. Love this one. The gall to call Southern French lavender fake. In Canada, some stores will accept American cash as payment, but by law have to still give Canadian change. I worked in a city that got a lot of American tourists, and it was crazy how often someone would get really frustrated with us for not giving them American change. I had someone even accuse me of lying about it being the law. To what end, lady? Every place I've worked at, our revenge has been to accept US cash at par. Repeat themselves over and over, more slowly and more loudly each time. No B. It's not we're thick or hard of hearing. We speak a different language here. Given the miracles of technology now, why do people not just keep a translator on their phone and type what they want to say and show it to them? Made life a lot easier when I went to Spain and didn't know how to ask for what I wanted. Calling black people African American despite men having never visited the USA. It's stupid. Black is not a racist term. I have a friend who is from an island and gets so mad when people call him African American. I know that those people are just trying to be politically correct and it's not their fault that somehow it's been drilled into their brain that black is racist. A lot of white Americans do that. Probably most. Not offensive or inappropriate, but I really want to talk about it. Once in the airport, coming back to Australia in where I'm from in the middle of summer, I saw Dad and his 2 children, all 3 of them wearing full winter coats. The dad said to the both of them, "Try to stay warm. It's going to be cold outside." German here. Never go to visit any concentration camp museum without understanding that in less than 10 minutes your blood will start to boil because of how disrespectful tourists can be. It's unbelievable. Moaning about not being able to use dollars in an English petrol station, then whinging that it shouldn't be raining cause it's summer. Silly man. I used to work in a high-end restaurant. 5 or 6 course meals are the standard, so people take their time to eat, chat and enjoy the evening for at least 2 to 3 hours. It is normal to have half an hour in between meals. If we would serve faster, the guest would complain about the food being served too fast. Anyway, this table of mostly local people plus one American woman being very loud with a thick, I guess, New York accent was complaining after 3 minutes after every course where her food was. First I explained the above. The rest of the table was also getting a bit awkward about her behavior. She kept complaining though, telling how incredible disappointed she was. I kept explaining that the food we serve is freshly made, it takes time to prepare, and that the whole idea is to enjoy the evening in with the people you are. She just would get concept and react with so much disbelief. Lady, you are abroad. If you want to stuff your face with food in under 5 minutes, go to a fast food chain, or even better, stay at home. I could see that happening. In the US, even at expensive restaurants, the typical experience is the staff trying to get you fed and out the door as fast as possible. The best one I've heard was the American tourist complaining that they built Edinburgh Castle so far from the train station. When walking round the Colosseum in Rome, my wife remarked she didn't believe it was really that old, as it seemed suspicious that it was built so close to the center of the modern city. I had fun unpacking that one. Talk to me in slow, shouting English as if I don't understand. He was in Western Canada, where everybody speaks English, and I'd already even said something in English to him. Don't let him be disappointed. Act like you don't understand and say I can't speak English, in clear English. There was a story about some Americans coming to my country to go skiing. This is Denmark. We have a shitload of hills, but not a single mountain. Add to that they came in the summer. No place in Denmark has year-round snow. Reading this post like maybe they wanted cross-country skiing. Oh. Not exactly dumb, but just being buttholes. My mom's job is to deal with tourists. Every other person from other countries at least tries to be either nice or neutral. The American guy asked if she understood him. She answers in English better than my own. And the guy just asked that question a few more times with a crap-eating grin. Apparently not the worst American she had encountered. Not weird, but disrespectful as heck. I was in a tour group in Tajikistan and we were inside a local's house who had invited us in for tea, and he was telling us about his family and how many children they have, etc. The only American in the group piped up and asked, what contraception does your wife use? Does she use herbs or something? Everyone was just aghast and he politely avoided the question. Then there was a long awkward silence, and so she asked again. At that point another tour member interjected and said, okay, I think it's time for us to leave. Thanks for having us. Putting aside that she asked a stranger in a different country about their sex life, it's just so impolite to bring that up in a conversation unprompted regardless of where you're from. When I came down from the Fuji summit after a 8-hour climb and 4-hour descent with 3 layers of clothing to protect myself from the weather, an American with a selfie stick, in t-shirt and shorts asked me where Mount Fuji was. I told him we are on Mount Fuji. It's a big mountain volcano. But where is the summit? I pointed to the summit and told him it's about 8 hours that way. This guy thought he could just come in with his selfie stick, grab a few quick selfies on the summit and return to Tokyo, lol. While interrailing on France, a couple of American dudes were very loudly talking crap about other passengers. I got my fair share. Apparently they tough, nobody could understand them. Shut them up by talking English to my friend. Only the most commonly understood language. I live in New Zealand and we have our special kind of churches called Marys. You are not allowed to wear shoes in them. One day I was in the Mary and I saw this middle-aged woman walk in with her shoes on. I walked over to her and politely asked her to leave her shoes at the door, and I kid you not, this is what she said. What is this, some kind of savage church? The men immediately kicked her out. In the US, certain areas it's not common to take off shoes. I don't want shoes in my house and it's a similar fight with some people. South African here. Americans tend to have this habit where they will climb out of their vehicle in the middle of a game reserve, get attacked by a wild animal because they wanted to get closer or try to pet it, and then cry about it. I thought people that come from the country that has grizzly bears and mountain lions would be a bit more cautious around wild animals. Also, the shock they experience when they realize there are cities here and not everyone is living in mud huts. Oh, they do the same thing while traveling in America. We have large dangerous animals in quite a few areas. Tourists think they can approach animals like bison for photos. Iceland. We get a lot of tourism when there isn't a pandemic and about half are American. It's mostly just ignorance and the refusal to accept that things work differently here. Also, while most people here speak English to some degree, there are a few tourists that are furious about it not being the default language in businesses that aren't even connected to tourism. God forbid we speak our own language at work. Oh, and Northern Lights. There's a ton of people who seem to think we can just flick a switch and have the Northern Lights appear. Ooh, I live in a beach tourist town in Australia. Have had numerous Americans I've encountered act like they own a patch of beach because where they're staying is adjacent to the beach. I suspect this is because the US allows private beaches and a lot of resorts have them. It's an active selling point in fact. The fact that they just assume, and also that they care enough to say something, remains obnoxious though. Why are you all not in kilts? Oh, I'm Scottish. My great-great-great-great-grandfather was from Scotland and his dad was a clan chieftain. 99% of us Scots don't care. Some will humor, others will outright call out on that balls. I got stopped by an American tourist as I was on my way to a wedding in my kilt. That prick straight up lifted the back of my kilt to prove I was a true Scotsman. My mate intercepted the perfect diving headbutt. Not inappropriate but butthole-ish and weird. Guy records me and friends shooing the herds of cows who were crapping in the middle of road, occasionally happen, in a car while yelling YOOOOO and recording. Dude starts commenting and slapping the cows passing by. Spook one and some of them starts to speed up a little bit. Made me and my friends in slight danger of getting rammed by a cow. Dude passed by us and then record our face while saying something that made my friend mad, and then proceed to squash the crap while he was passing by. Met him at the restaurant too. He ate the bananas leaves that served for the purpose of plating the nasi lemak, until he was halfway done and the uncle next table told him that's not for eating. He laughed and spit it all on the plate instead of the tissue. He also walked in the middle of the town without a shirt and literally threw stuff at the monkeys on the electric line, which made them scrambled inside the forest and some went to the primary school, which is in front of the forest. He was the main topic of that week gossips. An American once insisted that the proper way to eat nasi lemak was with chopsticks, and he tried educating me, a Malaysian, about it. This incident still triggers me. See them scream and say I'm going to sue you. New Zealand has ACC so you basically can't sue for accidents as it's covered. The guy got pretty angry that my English sucked when asking me for directions. I mean, yeah, it can be frustrating, but him taking the time to help you, WTF dude. He said I lived in Canada so I was supposed to speak it flawlessly. Like, dude, I spoke French my entire life but I'm doing my best over here to communicate. Sorry for the accent. Bro, I can't read your comment. Your accent's too strong. This just happened yesterday. We were in a park, where there is also a museum with a big staircase, and on the wall of the staircase there were some plaquettes commemorating the architects of the building. Their name, when they lived, in a few words about them are written on them. So I think it is pretty clear what those are, even if they are in a foreign language. And next to those there are some wreaths, just as a sign of respect and also decoration. Now on to what happened. Some tourists went there. One girl grabbed a wreath that was attached to the wall, put it on her head like a tiara or something and started taking pictures of herself. I had to go there and tell them that this is not the purpose they are to be used for. I have seen a very drunk American tourist in his 20s explaining to a Viet bartender in Vietnam how his American grandfather freed Vietnam of communists. I remember back in the late 1990s seeing a couple of young Americans in shock that they wouldn't be allowed to fly to Vietnam because they didn't have visa. But we're Americans, I guess they were another couple that didn't know the history. Not tourism, but in my workplace in England I used to work for a British hair attitude company and I would work night shift to take orders from America, Australia and Canada. I never had any problems with Australians or Canadians, but at least once or twice minimum a night I would receive calls from American people making prank calls and making fun of me for being English. They would call me W and other British swear words and talk in silly voices asking if I were drinking tea. Undoubtedly I was, but that's not important. Sometimes they would stay on the phone for ages asking me to say certain words, and because of the standards of the company we had to oblige unless there were swears, of course. I hope their parents saw their international phone bill afterwards. I'm from a small city in Germany and an American dude in his early 20s insulted me for drinking beer in public because it's illegal. In Germany you're allowed to drink beer in public at the age of 16. And he proceeded to laugh and insult my bad English, so yeah, Americans are weird. Mommy's busy baby, why don't you go climb on the big rocks? That was at Stonehenge. I also saw a bunch of American college students try to climb the Great Pyramid at Giza until serious uniformed men with firearms stopped them. My friend described a trip to an English tourist spot, one of many places said to be Arthur's Camelot. It required a climb up the picturesque hill to a quiet, tree-filled spot. Nothing of the castle to be seen, of course, but everybody gazed out over the surrounding land, contemplating the magic of the ancient myth. Finally arrives the chubby, puffing American who glances about with irritation, then loudly says in that familiar accent, "Where's the goddamn castle?" An American tourist orders a turkey dinner at a restaurant, and then flags down the server to let her know that the kitchen forgot the cranberry sauce. The server comes back with it in a small dish. After she finished her meal, someone at the table pointed out that she'd forgotten to use the cranberry sauce that she asked for. She says, "Oh, I don't like cranberry sauce." So the person at the table follows up with, "Then why did you ask the server to bring you some?" Her answer, "Because it comes with the meal." As a line cook, that kind of customer drives me insane. Anytime I've seen interactions between Americans and the Queen's Guard, does make me laugh though when the guardsman yells at them or just plow through them when marching. Just leave the lads alone, they have job to do and they are professional soldiers. I took my 5-year-old to Windsor Castle and was telling her about the guards, why we don't distract them, touch them, and what the medals are for. She was fascinated. She was rewarded by him inviting her to stand by him for a photo. Guards will interact, but being respectful is the key. I had dinner with an American in China. He asked for water in English, and the waiter didn't understand. He spoke up and repeated himself in a patronizingly slow voice, and again the waiter, not being able to speak English, didn't understand. I asked for the water in Chinese and the waiter left. The American then said, "It's so infuriating here sometimes. There are many things that can be annoying and inconvenient in China, but simply expecting people to understand your language is unreasonable as frick." Spent a large chunk of my life in China and this happened a lot. Lots of foreigners don't make the effort to learn basic words. It's much better now, but it's still sad people expect everyone to speak English. Not disrespectful but kinda funny. Bruges in Belgium is a nicely preserved town with many medieval elements. Apparently a lot of American tourists ask the locals, when does this theme park close? I hope they didn't climb the tower. Don't want to get a heart attack. I'm an American, but I saw this airhead American who was constantly trying to touch priceless museum specimens. They were marked "No tocar." The guards kept stopping her, but she seemed confused because she spoke no Spanish. We were deep into Mexico City. You should learn at least enough to read "No tocar." My parents owned a motel when I was younger. An American woman stayed for a night and she set the fire alarm off. She took an electric wall kettle, jug, off its heating element, put it on the stove, turned it on and gone to the bathroom. Completely destroyed the kettle and stove from what I remember. Americans have only recently discovered electric kettles and there are still plenty of people who have never used one, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is still happening today. They made fun of our money and how it looked. They claimed they couldn't figure it out because it was so weird, so they threw a bunch of bills at my sister and asked her to figure it out and give them change. We're Canadian. The number is literally on the bill. We all spoke English. They gave my sister several $100 bills. This was at an Apple festival and the fries only cost $5. WTF. Bank error in your favor. Collect $100. Claiming that Ireland isn't properly Irish, and that the only way to experience true, traditional Irish culture is to visit Boston. American Irish is like a bizarre hyper parody of actual Irish, and it gets weird fast. Even more so if you start talking history or politics, where the Irish American take is like the Hollywood movie version. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.